It is the Wednesday edition, Mr. Relevant. I'm Alex Strouf with you from the Grubel offices. One call, that's all studio at the Avenue in downtown Milwaukee, actually in our 620 WTMJ production studio. As we have a pre-recorded edition of Mr. Relevant coming with for you the next couple of days, but I know the pre-record word is scary, but these are really, really fun editions. If you haven't caught State of the Packers 2025 yet, with myself, Gabe Neitzel from Jen, Gabe, and Chewy, and Jason Wilde from Wilde and Tausch. If you're not familiar with what State of the Packers is, and you're a Packers fan, I encourage you strongly to stick with me for the next 3 episodes as I enjoy a little pre-football season vacation out west with my girlfriend. Look, this is one of my favorite shows I get to do every year, right? Like, I do not take lightly how cool my job is and how grateful I am to do what I do every day. I love Mr. Relevant. I love doing KBN. I love doing Green Bay Game Day. I love doing Sunday Karma, all the different programs, Weekly Wilde, that I'm a part of throughout a calendar year. But this one is special because it's an annual show. It's a tradition. It's a long-standing tradition in Good Karma Brands in ESPN Wisconsin called State of the Packers. We do it at Summerfest. Usually, at least since I've been a part of it, this is the 4th year I've been a part of it. Since 2022 is the first year I took over State of the Packers. And we do it typically on the last day of Summerfest. And Jason is obviously his unbelievable insight. If you've caught him on this program or Wilde and Tausch or Green Bay Game Day or all of the shows he's on, the dude has incredible insight and historical perspective because, not to call him old, but he's covered the Packers for a long time now, right? Since the 90s, since 1996, I believe was his first season. Might have even been before that, covering the Packers on a day-to-day basis. So he has terrific insight. Gabe Neitzel is a Packers fan, but he's been around the game a long time. He's done the sports talk thing a long time. He's been obsessed with the Packers a long time. And to hear his insight, and he was terrific on this program a couple weeks ago or last week. And so my job on this show is to set up the conversations and get the hell out of the way, right? Let the other two guys cook, and obviously I sprinkle in some of my commentary or questions or analysis, whatever I have on the Packers. Because if you know me, whether that's personally, whether you know me, through this program, whether you know me through the various shows I've been a part of over the years at Good Karma or on the internet or whatever, I'm a huge Packers fan. I'm a nerd for this stuff, and I'm in the weeds. And this serves as an annual opportunity to kind of give me an idea of where we think collectively the Packers are at heading into whatever season it is. So we will do a 3-part series here on Mr. Irrelevant. Today, Wednesday, will be the state of the offense. We will listen to and look at the state of the quarterback, Jordan Love, state of the running backs, the state of the pass catchers, which is both the wide receivers and the tight ends, and then the state of the offensive line, which, of course, was upgraded, at least we think, this offseason by the Packers by bringing in Aaron Banks. So a ton to get to in this episode. This is going to be the longest of the 3. On Friday's show, we will look at the state of the defense, state of the defensive line, state of the linebacker, state of the defensive backs. And then Monday's show, we will look at a couple of different things, some shorter conversations we had on state of the Packers, and then our long, final thoughts conversation. Who is under the most pressure for this Packers offense? Each of us had different answers by design. And then state of the coach, state of the general manager. So quick talk on, is there any way that Brian Gutekunst and Matt LaFleur are on the hot seat entering the season under the new direction of Ed Policy, the new president and CEO, which will be announced next week or in 2 weeks at this point. And then just kind of final thoughts going into the 2025 Packers season. Are they quite a Super Bowl team, or do they need some things to fall their way in order to get there? So that is the plan the next 3 shows while I'm on vacation, and then I will return to you next Wednesday, a week from today, the 16th, live with Josh DiMaggio, Will Summers, and Hunter Vaughn, our normal crew. But today, Friday and Monday, you're going to be hearing from me, Jason Wilde, and Gabe Neitzel, so let's waste no more time. State of the Packers, state of the offense. Here is the state of the quarterback. Jordan Love entering year 3 as the starter, fresh off his first season as the $55 million man. Obviously battled some injuries last season and was okay. He wasn't as good as he was the back half of the 2023 season. But 2025 brings. You're
getting very emotional.
My Superman. 2025.
I wanted to meet the Man of Steel.
2025 brings a huge season.
Yeah. All right.
For Jordan Love.
So I appreciate our guest. You clearly want attention, right? When you go to Summerfest, when it's 90 degrees in a full-blown Superman costume. But here's the thing. Great transition by you, because here's the reality. The Packers don't need their quarterback to be Superman. And I don't like to recycle lines, but as you pointed out, I'm on so many shows, it's hard not to. They don't have to win always because of Jordan Love. They need to win with him. And sometimes that means he's going to have to make those Superman plays and have those moments. But what they definitely need, and look, he had those throws last season, right, Gabe? I mean, there were throws where you were like, whew, that's a wow throw. Remember when I used to talk about how few of those we saw when he was a backup and he was in practice? We saw plenty of wow throws over the last 2 seasons. What we need to see is healthy and consistent play from him in 2025. And if that happens, that puts them in a much different place this season than they finished last year, losing 3 in a row to close the year.
It's the consistency in terms of the accuracy, the decision-making, because it seemed like he had finally gotten over that hump, right? So he doesn't really turn the ball over second half of last year, has the 2 bad turnovers against San Francisco, or 2 years ago, I should say. And then last year, turnovers were plentiful early in the season. And part of that, we threw an interception in the opening game, throws 3 in his comeback against the Minnesota Vikings, and then turned the ball over every game. Like for 6 or 7 games in a row. And then once again goes, oh, hey, turnover-free play the rest of the way, only to throw 3 interceptions in the postseason. And I know you love to recycle one of Jason's favorite lines, growth isn't linear, but you have to be better.
I do love that line.
You do. It's the one you use most often.
You have to be better in your decision-making when you're in those big games, because those are the moments where Jordan Love just didn't show up as much this year. And that's what ultimately hurt the Packers and made them, once again, the 7 seed. And they ended up playing the best team in the NFL right away in the first week of the postseason. You play a little bit more consistent. Maybe you're still a wild card, but you get a better matchup the way that the Commanders did. And now the Commanders are everybody's darling because of the run they were able to go on last year because of the favorable matchups they had in the postseason.
And it's strange that we have such a different feeling about this team. And I know Will put it in the open for the show, LaFleur's answer when it was the last question heading into the offseason, and he wanted to say something stronger than we think we can have a really competitive team. And he wanted to make sure he checked himself in terms of expectations. But the bottom line is they feel like they've got a really good football team. Mm-hmm. The issue is the way they finished last season as opposed to the way they finished 2023. It's a completely different vibe about them, right? They won the last 3 of the regular season in 23. Then they go to Dallas and kick Mike McCarthy's team's keister. And for 3 quarters in Santa Clara, they've got the 49ers on the ropes. Mm-hmm. Instead, they lose their last 3 games, including the playoff game. And in his last 5 playoff quarters, Jordan Love has thrown 5 interceptions. And yes, Malik Heath ran too deep of a route on one of them. But the bottom line is that he has to be better than he was, but he doesn't have to be Aaron Rodgers of the 2010 Super Bowl run. He doesn't have to be that guy for a 17-game stretch, but they need him to be more, to your point, consistent on his accuracy, consistent on his – and I've expressed this to you both from time to time this offseason. It really bothers me that any level of critique that isn't he's star-spangled awesome is viewed – these days by a portion of the fan base as hating on Jordan Love. I think we all agree he is a good quarterback. The only question now is how good is he going to turn out to be? And how far are they going to get with him and because of him in the postseason moving forward?
Yeah, how good can he be is the ultimate question when it comes to Jordan Love, because we've seen moments, as you mentioned, of the star-spangled awesomeness, right, in 2023, that amazing stretch, as you referenced. Last year was a little bit more of a roller coaster, but I think a lot of that was likely due to injury, right? He hurt his knee in the opener, had the groin injury.
But that's it.
When Gabe does this,
you get the
be ready.
He's rubbing his hands.
But that's all he gets.
Yeah.
Okay. If we want to say, and it's not to me, it's not an excuse. It is a fact. He was injured last year, and he hadn't really ever been injured in his career. Whether we're going back to Utah State, obviously sat for a long time. You have to play through injury in the NFL. Patrick Mahomes led his team to a Super Bowl with a bad calf. Aaron Rodgers, how many times did he play through injury? And honestly, because he wasn't Brett Favre, didn't get the credit that he probably deserved for being as tough as he was.
Played an entire 2018 season with a crack in his knee that he sustained in the opener. Played the 2022 season with a broken thumb And everyone just thought, well, he really sucked in those seasons.
Yeah, so he does. I mean, but that's part of playing in the NFL, having that injury and finding a way to be productive. I mean, I think of Aaron Rodgers in 2014. He couldn't move on his calf.
Correct.
And they were that close to still making it to a Super Bowl because he was able to be effective despite having that injury. So I think for Jordan, some things went awry because of the injury. He was trying to figure out how to play through it. But if you want to be a consistent player, if you want to be a top 10 quarterback in this league, which he needs to be.
Yes, he does.
You have to find a way to still be productive and still uphold the standard that they have for you, even if you have a tough injury.
I think the ultimate point with Jordan Love is, and I think this has been the theme of the offseason, at least for me, there's no more excuses. Right? The Packers continue to invest in pieces around him. They finally spend a first-round pick on a wide receiver in Matthew Golden. They invest heavily in upgrading the offensive line this offseason by bringing in Aaron Banks, who I know we'll talk about in a little bit. The pieces around him are no longer, I don't think you can anymore go, well, they're the youngest team in the league. They're young. They're going to make mistakes. And that will certainly still happen this season. Don't get me wrong, especially with Matthew Golden and Savion Williams. But we are at a point now in year 3 of Jordan Love that I think the excuses are kind of gone in terms of the pieces around him because of the investment level that the Packers have, well, invested.
Yeah, and what I like about Jordan Love is that he doesn't use any of those excuses, right? And he doesn't blame his teammates, which other quarterbacks do from time to time, right? And, I love the fact that when he was asked about some of the drops, and what was the one game where they had like 9 drops in a single game? He said, well, if I throw the ball more accurately, maybe some of those they catch, right? Mm-hmm. They did have 33 drops. That's part of this equation, too. If even half of those are caught, his completion percentage is a meaningful amount better. So those all, like Gabe, you put it perfectly, they're not excuses, they are facts. But when we start to lean on them to use them as excuses, that's when I have a little bit more of a problem. And again, what I like about Jordan, the only time in now, the first 2 years he was in the league, I was never in the locker room with him because of the COVID restrictions. So 22, 23, 24 were the 3 years that I was able to be around him in person. I had not seen him even be mildly indignant with a reporter, except for when someone asked him during OTAs about taking a step back. Well, what do you mean taking a step back? That's the only time. I mean, he wasn't even that way when something I said on Homer spun into he's going to ask for a trade if Rodgers doesn't leave after the 22 season. I mean, he and I had a great conversation, and he wasn't a jerk about it. That was the only time I've seen him get irritated. He is very even-keeled, and I think that's a really good quality. And I think when you look at the resume he's put together so far, LaFleur, when he was asked what his biggest thing that he has to do this season is, it was become a more vocal leader. It wasn't about anything else in his game. I'm really eager to see if he is as good as we think he can be, or if he's only just as good as we've seen him, which then you start to wonder just how good that really is and if that's good enough.
How do we measure that? Is that just simply the eye test? Because obviously Packers fans are so used to
QBR because he was a top 5 quarterback user.
I know you love that. I mean, obviously Packers fans are very used to high-level quarterback play, right? That's no secret between Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers, and obviously now Jordan Love. But we think he can be good, is what we say a lot when it comes to Jordan Love. So how do we evaluate that?
Well,
I'm just curious how you guys
good.
feel.
He is. Yeah, he is good. It's just how good are you now in the league? I think he has established over the last 2 years with the way he's been able to play, the Packers being in the postseason, him being a big part of that. He's a good quarterback.
Yep.
That is undisputable. No one's going to say that.
He makes some big boy throws that deserve to be viewed that way.
I don't know if anybody is still saying, well, I don't know if Jordan Love can play in this league. Nobody is saying that the way we were in the first 8 weeks of his starting career.
Right?
Over the last season and a half, he's proven he belongs in this league, and he's proven at times he can play at a high level. Can he sustain that high level over 17 games is the next step in his progression.
And it's up to Matt LaFleur to do an even better job of putting him in that position to succeed, right? I think as we watched the season go on last year, there was a staleness to their offense. LaFleur talked about how sloppy they were. He had that line about we need to win our one-on-ones when he channeled his inner Mike McCarthy, which I wasn't expecting. So all those things are factors, too.
Is there more pressure on LaFleur this year because of the change at quarterback coach? To make sure that the new coaches are on top of everything they need to be on top of in terms of Jordan Love and his continued development?
So that's a good question. I think there's more pressure on him, but it's not because of that. Like, I think it's possible that now Jordan Love is at a point in his career where he doesn't need the, for lack of a better term, fundamentalist coach in Tom Clements who taught all the foot. Like, certainly these other coaches that they have there, and they got a lot of cooks in that kitchen.
They sure do.
Right? They've got, obviously, Matt LaFleur's in the quarterback room all the time. They've got Sean Mannion, who was promoted to quarterback's coach, but now Luke Getsy, who was the quarterback's coach before Tom Clements came back, is also in there. So they, you got to be a little bit careful with that stew that you're creating for your quarterbacks. But I think there's plenty of guys there that are familiar with what Tom Clements taught, including Jordan Love himself, that they can harken back to that. To me, I do wonder if this is a year that he actually needed someone different to help him make the next step. A guy who, albeit as a backup, played in the league a long time, has a slightly different background and experience, and is younger. I mean, Sean Mannion is younger than Aaron Rodgers is, and Aaron Rodgers is still playing, and Sean Mannion's in his second season as an assistant in Green Bay.
Let's move on to state of the running backs, coming off of one heck of a debut season with the Green Bay Packers last year. Josh Jacobs back for year 2 in Green Bay this upcoming season. Now, we also have some question marks behind him. Marshawn Lloyd, who they spent a mid-round pick on last year, did not play at all last year, partially due to an injury earlier in the year, and then an emergency appendectomy, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
So
right when he was going to come back.
He will make a real debut in 2025. Emmanuel Wilson still on the roster. Jason, the state of the running back, I think the Packers feel very, very good about that position.
Well, they certainly feel very, very good about their starter. And look, I think Emmanuel Wilson is probably a little underappreciated. The guy averaged 5 yards a carry last year.
He's underappreciated.
Yeah, I was wrong on him. I'll admit it.
But, hey, look, we were wrong at this show 2 years ago in the summer of 2023 about the Packers' record in 2023.
In the 2023 season, during the 49ers playoff game, Emmanuel Wilson got several carries when it was a one-possession game, one-score game. And we were doing a watch-along on the ESPN Milwaukee YouTube, myself and Gabe Neitzel, and I was yelling, "Why is Emmanuel Wilson on the field?" Turned out I was pretty wrong about him. He's a pretty solid player.
He is, and to your point about Marshawn Lloyd, they like him. It's kind of like the old Ty Summers line from Uncle Homer. I love everything about him. I don't know anything about him. Because we don't know. He's had 6 NFL carries. He's played in 1 NFL game. And so the idea that they would be okay if Josh Jacobs missed time, I'm not sure I'm on board with that, as much as I like Emmanuel Wilson more than you. And you guys are on the esteemed Blue Ribbon panel that's involved with the 20 most important Packers of 2025 rankings on channel3000.com. And it took me a long time to decide on who should be 2 and who should be 1. I'm not going to reveal it now, but I think Josh Jacobs is a really, really important piece to a team that ran the ball more than they threw it last season, and not just because of that one game when they gave it to him 742 times against the Colts.
He's the reason they revamped their offense. Because
Exactamundo!
He's not just, they didn't just turn around and hand it off to him. They changed the way that they block a lot of times because they wanted to make it easier for Josh Jacobs.
Yep.
They decided that he is that kind of player. They think he's that special, that he can be the workhorse that they can rely upon. And they're going to be, while I do think they'd like to maybe throw it a little bit more this year, and maybe not run it actually more than they throw it. That was, I think, also something out of necessity, but they found something that worked for them. Maybe be a little bit more efficient out of your play-action passing game with Josh Jacobs. But he is, without a doubt, their best offensive player.
Yep.
And they acted like it last year. And I'm guessing we're going to see more of the same of them wanting and being selective when they give it to him 742 times in one game, certainly. Not do that every single week. But he's somebody that they're expecting big things from still. I think he had a top 5 season in the history of the Green Bay Packers in terms of running back last year.
Couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah, 100% agree. But I think the thing with him I'm intrigued by this season because I don't know the answer. We won't until the season begins. But are they going to shift a little bit away from utilizing him as much as they did a year ago in the running game, right? Are they going to involve more Marshawn Lloyd? Will they involve more Emmanuel Wilson than giving him the ball 742 times if their quarterback goes down and Malik Willis has to play a game?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and one that, they obviously had to do that with Aaron Jones, right? It was always about load management with him, and they basically, one of the many appealing things about Josh Jacobs was that they didn't feel like they had to do that with him, and they clearly didn't, right? I mean, to me, Gabe's best point, though, is, among many, is the fact that he really was the engine that made their offense go. And not only did they revamp their offense to run more duo blocking schemes because that's what he preferred, and he apparently likes running out of the shotgun, which I thought was interesting because I think the drawback to that is their play-action game was not nearly as effective as it had been the year before, which, oh, by the way, was a key component in Jordan Love's productivity in the second half of 2023. Because remember, Aaron Jones had like 6 100-yard games down the stretch.
Sure did.
So you put all that together, and they have to revamp what they're going to do there. But to me, the biggest thing about Josh Jacobs, and I started to tell Josh this statistic when we talked to him during the OTAs, and I don't blame him because my questions are long, but he interrupted me because he knew the statistic, and that is Saquon Barkley last season had 2,006 total rushing yards. He had 1,328 rushing yards before contact. Josh Jacobs had 1,329 total rushing yards. He had one fewer yard before contact than Josh Jacobs had in the entire season.
Wow.
And Josh Jacobs' rushing yards were more after contact, 700 plus, than before contact. And so when you look at what they've done to the offensive line, and this is, again, an argument for why he should or could be number one on our list, is that they had not only revamped their offense for him last year, they revamped their offensive line this offseason, and it wasn't to protect Love better. It was to get a road-grading left guard in Aaron Banks and to move a much better power blocker in Elton Jenkins to center. And then they've got Sean Ryan at right guard. If they're going to give the job at left tackle to Jordan Morgan, I would argue that he's probably a better run blocker than he is a pass blocker. So those are all little breadcrumbs that lead me to think they're not going to go easy on Josh Jacobs, but they may try to lessen his load from time to time.
Hansel again with the breadcrumbs.
Yes.
Got to pay attention to those.
We were talking in the break, and Jason used the term sexy to describe the first-round selection in this year's NFL Draft, which, of course, was hosted in Green Bay. Outgoing President and CEO Mark Murphy making the selection for the Packers, or announcing the selection, rather, for the Packers of wide receiver.
Maybe he made it, too. I don't know.
He might have. That was the rumor, at least. Wide receiver Matthew Golden from Texas. For the first time since 2003, the Packers spend a first-round pick on a wide receiver. They followed that up the following day with a third-round selection of Savion Williams, another wide receiver. Romeo Doubs entering a contract year, his fourth year. Christian Watson tore his ACL at the end of last season, so we aren't sure when we will see him, despite some positive videos making the rounds on social media that makes him look very quick and healthy. Jaden Reed, another season of leading the Packers in receiving yards, but not really going over the hump. A couple of disappearing acts for him. Dontavian Wicks still looks good, just struggled with drops last year.
Same number of receptions as he had as a rookie, so he did not make the jump either. Although, unlike Jaden Reed in the second half of the season, he was more consistent and the drops were resolved. Not the case for Jaden Reed.
We still have yet to see a full-blown season of both young tight ends entering year three healthy together. Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave enter, at least at this point, this season both healthy, which is an encouraging sign. The state of the pass catchers is an interesting one because you've got a bunch of them. You've got high hopes for all of them. It just hasn't quite happened yet. You don't have that quote-unquote wide receiver one. Could this be the year? Jason, as you look at the pass catchers and evaluate where they are at, what do you make of them as we enter year three with Jordan Love as the starting quarterback?
Yeah, there's a lot of guys facing really pivotal seasons, right? I mean, not only, as you mentioned, Romeo Doubs, who, again, maybe I am just not very forgiving, or you've heard maybe I hold a grudge or two. And I don't hold any of them personally against Romeo Doubs, the guy.
Sure.
I think he's a different type of guy. So I don't hold a grudge against him for staying home from work and getting suspended the way he did. But I wonder if that is going to give them pause, combined with the concussions, about signing him to an extension, right? In my estimation, they have 9 guys right now on their roster at wide receiver who are worthy of an NFL roster spot, right? Assuming if and when Watson is healthy, it's Watson, it's Dobbs, it's Reed, it's Wicks, it's Melton, it's Malik Heath, it is Savion Williams, it is Matthew Golden, and it is McCole Hardman. Like, I think he is an NFL wide receiver still. I know he's dealt with issues the last few years injury-wise, but they're not keeping 9. There's not a lot that I know for certain. They're not going to have 9 wide receivers on their roster to open the year.
What about 8 and you put the other guy at corner?
Yeah, I do think Bo Melton has a role on this team. Now, again, could that be my bias that I just like him as a dude? Maybe. I've been guilty of that before.
Yeah, but I don't think they're going through what they have with him if they don't.
So I guess
my point was simply that it's big for the 2 guys that are in contract years. It's big for 2 guys that will be eligible for extensions after this year that haven't really made the jump. They need those 2 to make a year 3 jump. And then, of course, it's big for the 2 rookies to get off to a strong start.
I wrote this to Jason when he put Matthew Golden as number 19 on his top 20 list over at channel3000.com, 20 most important Packers for this season. To me, Matthew Golden should have been higher on that list because he's the only one who can be a star of that group. They've got a lot of good guys, but they don't have a lot of guys that can be great. He's got the potential with the athleticism that he has, the production he had at the college level, and with the. Sometimes I think we fall in love with this idea that, oh man, look at all these guys they have. They're just kind of guys. It's not true depth. When we talk about Bo Melton and Malik Heath, yeah, they've had moments, but it makes me think of, I don't know if you'll remember this name, I believe his name was Charles Johnson, who was a wide receiver on the back part of the Packers roster that, oh man, we can't cut him. He's going to be too good. He's going to be really good. And then they finally cut him. He goes to Minnesota for like a half of a season, and that was it. He was out of the league.
I would have gone Torrey Gurley there.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Okay.
Another
That's
guy.
Another one.
He was a training camp star who caught 1 NFL pass for Cleveland in his career.
So that's the way I kind of feel about Bo Melton. Yes, he was the first one to have 100 yards a while ago, but if he was really that good, he'd be playing more. Same thing with
I think
Malik
he
Heath.
makes the team because of his special teams.
Correct.
Role.
Yes.
But again, that takes up a wide receiver spot.
Yes.
That might have gone to someone who is more likely to be productive in your. Now, here's the reason why I put Golden as low as I did, and primarily I wanted someone high profile early in the release of the list, and I wanted it to be a little controversial because I think you can make the argument very easily, as you did, of him being higher. I think I can argue against that, though. I think I can look at the track record of rookie wide receivers who became really good players. Now, again, they joined the team when there was a clear-cut number 1, but the one time that someone went out and had 60 catches as a rookie was in 2023 when Jaden Reed did it. How good is Jaden Reed? Because how good Jaden Reed is, how good Dontavion Wicks is, and how soon they get Christian Watson back, I do think factors into the number of opportunities that they're going to give Matthew Golden from the jump versus, say, down the stretch of the season.
The coaching staff doesn't think Jaden Reed's. They think he's a good player. They don't think he's that good based on his playing time. And I dove into this. So, excuse me while I pull out my little notes here. Because I was
just pulled out a sheet of paper.
I did.
Where did that come from?
That's Gabe Neitzel's music.
I didn't want to bring my laptop, so I was kind of looking into this. So last year, Jaden Reed only played 63.2% of the snaps as a wide receiver, which out of context probably doesn't make a ton of, okay, what does that mean? So I looked at some of the other number 2 wide receivers in the division. Jameson Williams played 79.3% of his snaps. Rome Odunze, 84. Jordan Addison, 81.8. Jaden Reed has never reached any of those numbers that those guys are averaging in a single game. He's never played 80% of the snaps in a single game. And his snaps continued to go down as we went last year. You brought up Dontavion Wicks, who overall played a less percent of their snaps than Jaden Reed did last year.
What was Reed's number again? I'm sorry.
So Reed last year, 63.2%, which was second on the team.
And if I'm not mistaken, they didn't utilize him a lot in 2 wide receiver sets.
Correct, because they only trust him out of the slot. So Wicks ended up playing more than Reed in 5 of the last 6 games last season. Wow. So part of Reed's production wasn't just the drops. It was also the coaching staff wasn't putting him on the field for an opportunity to make plays. So I'm not looking at Jaden Reed as someone who's going to suddenly be somebody they trust on the outside if they're going to utilize more 2 tight end sets. I don't think Jaden Reed is somebody that, they like, and they think he can be a gadget player, but the way they used him last year was almost exclusively out of the slots.
I think there's one other factor that we have to include in that, and that is he was beat up for most of the season, not as an excuse for his production, but of how they may use him differently. You look at Savion Williams, he's 6'2", he's 220 pounds or whatever he is. Stop, and Matt LaFleur admitted this, and this was one of the things that came up after the draft, and then we obviously had the Drew Rosenhaus affair, etc. But look, Jaden Reed, he's got return skills, he's got a lot of appealing qualities. Stop running him on jet sweeps and pop passes, because sometimes they work, and sometimes he gets absolutely obliterated by a tackler, and then he's walking around with a bad shoulder and a chest injury. Use him in a way that also protects him from being too nicked up to be productive. And I think Matt LaFleur has said that on the record, that is something they need to do a better job of. So maybe he has the same snap numbers, but he's used differently, and maybe that allows him to be more productive.
And maybe he can be productive, but playing that many snaps, you can't be a star.
Yeah, you're viewing that as a huge concern.
You can't be so. And he led the Packers.
Which is why he got a new agent, because he's going to be playing somewhere else in 2 seasons.
I look at him as the coaching staff's not going to put him on the field enough for him to be a huge difference maker. To only play that many snaps, he only played 70 or more % of the snaps in 5 games last year. That's it.
And were they, just out of curiosity, I'm curious if that was games they were losing.
I would have to go back and look.
It's not on his little sheet.
It's not on the little sheet.
I mean, I see notes about Lucas Vaness on that sheet, so I don't think this is the only appearance this sheet of paper is making.
We've got this for a number of
things. It's like the Dead
Sea
Scrolls.
I looked aside.
Incredible.
Again, that was the number 2 receivers I was comparing him against to the other guys. Not even the number 1 guys.
So who played the most
teams.
snaps?
For the Packers at wide receiver, Romeo Doubs, 77.1%.
A guy who we all kind of feel like is probably playing
entering his final
last season in Green Bay.
Yeah.
But again, he didn't even get to that 80% threshold that most number 2 receivers in the division.
Right, which tells you what?
That they
don't see any of these guys as a number 1. And that's why Matthew Golden is on their team. But how soon will he be that guy is the question.
That's what I was about to get to, because I do think Matt LaFleur is going to fall in love with him, because I think he's going to be able to utilize him in so many different capacities, whether that's in the slot, whether that's outside, etc. I think Golden is going to have the ability to prove he can be the number 1 for this team for many years to come, and I think it will likely be quick. That's my prediction. I believe Matthew Golden will see a lot of playing time fast.
I hope you're right, because he has physical tools that all these guys don't have, right? Like, they all have one thing that we all kind of like. Oh,
good point.
Dontavian Wicks can get open. Oh, yeah. Christian Watson's got speed. Really good catching. Yeah. Great hands for Romeo Doubs. You've got the shiftiness of Jaden Reed. And you want to combine all those into one receiver, and then you've got a good one.
Jerry Rice.
Yeah,
right. Then you've got Jerry Rice.
Instead of just trying to mix and match the different matchups that they have. And as the season went along,
good point.
They trusted. I think Wicks was playing more because they trust him blocking, and they want him out there. And the drops started to go away, which is why his snap count numbers started to go up. So I think for Matthew Golden, it's how quick can you learn the playbook? How fast can you be comfortable on the outside? Because they're going to be running, I think, a lot of 2 tight end sets with Musgrave and with Kraft, because those are 2 guys they've shown they actually do trust. Musgrave when he's healthy, Kraft obviously with what he's been able to do the last season and a half.
Perfect transition, because I do want to shift gears over to the tight ends real quick, because Tucker Kraft is a guy that I think we all gush over, right, when we do our daily shows during the Packers season. That was a guy who really, really impressed last year. Can he get to a top 5, top 7 tight end in the league level this season is my big question when it comes to Tucker Kraft.
I think that's tough, because there's a lot of really good tight ends in the league, but I think he can take that next step and be one of the top production guys for the Packers, just based on the way that they've talked about him and wanting him to get more involved. And again, some of that is off the play action stuff. Some of that is him owning the middle part of the field. Chewy talks about this all the time, where in the play, I've got it memorized, Fox 2XY hook. Chewy knew that play was called, he's getting the football. That was a bread and butter play they ran back in the 90s. And when we watch stuff for all 22, he's like, I don't see any bread and butter plays. Like, I don't see something that they consistently go to, and yep, this is how we're getting this guy involved. And I think they're going to find those plays for Tucker Kraft this year.
I agree with everything Gabe said.
He's cooking this segment.
He is, and it's not all written down on his little sheet. I would also add this, though. The one thing I worry about with Tucker Kraft is kind of the same thing I worry about with Josh Jacobs. And look, those two guys are tone setters with their physicality. But when you are that physical, you do put yourself at risk. And my helicopter beat writer instincts start to take over because I think Tucker Kraft is special. I think he's, I got a lot of grief. I made a number of comparisons last season. I think most of them held pretty well, right? Xavier McKinney had a Charles Woodson-esque effect.
Impact.
They don't play
definitely.
the same position. He didn't have a bunch of touchdowns. But that comp and the way he was credited with being the guy who got Jair to straighten up and fly right until he had the knee injury, okay? I made the comp between Evan Williams and Micah Hyde. And the first person to confirm that after I got grief from Tausch was Evan Williams, who said he used to watch film of him all the time and he patterned his game after him. And then on your show, I said Tucker Kraft is more like Chewy because he can do everything. And that is that is the type of tight end I want. I like Luke Musgrave. He's got more J-Mike to him, right?
In terms of what?
In terms of being able to run down the seam and get
He's not going to block.
Also part of the
it's
equation.
Receiving tight end, yeah.
Well, probably knows the plays better, though. But the bottom line is that Tucker Kraft does everything, and he doesn't do anything at less than 110%. And that does concern me that he played all 17 games last season, but he did it after tearing a pec. My expectation for him is he's not going to change the way he plays.
No.
So they have to protect him, again, from himself a little bit.
So to put a bow on the state of the pass catchers.
What are you, Tausch?
What?
To put a bow on it? That's his big line. He loves that line.
Got to put a ball on everything.
Got to put a bow on it.
Well, I'm attempting to put a bow on it. The state of the pass catchers.
That's a shot from me interrupting.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
That's exactly what that was, yes. To put a bow on the state of the pass catchers.
Also something that Tausch has a problem with you.
Jason, would you agree that the state of the pass catchers is a healthy state as we enter 2025?
It absolutely is. I'm not quite as down on how good these guys can become as Gabe might be based on his little scribblings. Because
Jaden Reed, yes.
Well, Jaden Reed, Dontavion Wicks, I'm going to go down with that ship. I'm still waiting. I think Robert Ferguson is really going to be a good player.
my former neighbor.
I was a big believer in him, too. It never really came together for him either. But my point is that I like these guys a little bit more. I would love to have seen what, say, two of them would have done had they just been the number one and number two like most teams have. But the Goody plan, I think in some ways is smart and in some ways stunts growth. Because you know how you get better at playing football?
Wait, I think I know this one.
I think you do too.
You play football.
Playing
Bingo.
Football. And you can't play them all at the same. You can't have six wides on the field at once.
Right.
And so I'm eager to see what jump these guys make because I do believe in the Homer rule. And we have seen glimpses from all of them when they've been young players. And to Gabe's point earlier, they ain't young players anymore. You're in year 3, year 4. It's time to produce and produce in a big way. The growth is not linear. No longer really applies. You're still growing, but you got to produce.
If you're looking for a new contract, you're not a young player anymore.
Right.
That's a fact.
Right.
Gabe Neitzel, the final word on the state of the pass catchers.
I think it's in a decent spot. I don't think it's as healthy as the quarterback and running back. And it comes down to how much are these guys going to grow? How quickly can Matthew Golden get up to speed? Can Luke Musgrave stay healthy? I understand a lot of that has been odd injuries, right? It's not like, he's got a hamstring, he's got a calf injury.
He's got a kidney.
He's got a lacerated kidney. Oh, what? You can do that? I didn't know. So I think
Pee and blood.
So I think it's a matter of, those guys staying healthy and then also actually taking that step forward that they were unable to do a year ago.
Time now for the state of the offensive line of the Green Bay Packers. Josh Myers is out as the center. He is no longer a Green Bay Packer. Aaron Banks is in as the new left guard. Elton Jenkins, we know will slide over to center. That's just assuming he gets paid first. He wants his guaranteed money as he moves from left guard
Just
to
wants
center.
money that he's already got in his contract to be guaranteed.
Yep.
Don't think it's a big ask.
Don't think it's a big ask either. Jordan Morgan, of course, last year's first-round pick, could not crack the starting lineup last year. He will attempt to do so again this year at left tackle in a battle with Rasheed Walker this training camp. But the Packers invested in their offensive line. It's as simple as that. This offseason also spending a second-round pick on Anthony Melton. Is that his name? Did I get that right?
Yes.
From
Belton.
NC State? Belton.
Belton.
Not Bo Melton. Belton.
Bo Melton. Anthony Belton.
That's confusing. Okay, regardless, lots of investment. Aaron Banks and Belton.
If you start calling him Mo Belton, then we'll really have problems.
That's correct. Tone Belton in the second round.
Beltone. There you go. That's how you'll remember it.
That is. Thank you very much for that.
Here to help.
The offensive line was upgraded this offseason, correct?
We
would all agree?
Like, how soon can I get out of here? Can I just get my major cheeseburger and leave?
And get out of here. Phonics with Strouf.
It has been, look, it's been changed. We'll see if it's been upgraded, right? Like,
Sure.
if you start Jordan Morgan at left tackle instead of Rasheed Walker.
Is that an upgrade?
Is that an upgrade? I think Elton Jenkins is an upgrade at center over Josh Myers, and you certainly paid Banks to be an upgrade at left guard, and he's getting paid more than the guy that was playing left guard. Will he be an upgrade? I don't know. That looked like a lot of money to give a guy whose resume does not have any of the accomplishments that most guys that get paid have. Now, that said, that's right on brand with Goody, right? Goody's brand is, I am not paying guys that have accomplished things. I'm paying guys that I think are going to. Like Zadarius Smith had done next to nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I think he had an 8-sack season,
which is his career high right before he came to Green.
Right. So I'm not saying that Banks will be a disappointing signing. I'm just saying I don't know if I'm comfortable stating as fact that they upgraded their offensive line. They've certainly made changes to it.
They need to figure out these issues that they have contract-wise with their guys, because first of all, with Elton Jenkins, just guaranteeing a little bit of his money to guarantee that he's going to be here, because the money he's making is a lot of money for a center. Hey, I want to make sure I'll slide over, I'll do what's best for the team, but now you got to do something that's right for me. That seems like a fair negotiation. And then with Zack Tom, I don't know why Goody refuses to learn the lesson of taking care of things earlier rather than later. Didn't take care of it early with Davante Adams, loses Davante Adams. Now we find this situation where, okay, I'm not going to take care of this situation, and the longer you wait, the more expensive. It's not going to get cheaper if you're waiting to sign Zack Tom as your right tackle. Because what happens if Zack Tom, who's now going to be healthy this year, has a healthy season and gets a couple more votes and becomes second-team All-Pro, or heaven forbid, first-team All-Pro? You know how expensive that's going to get for you because you refuse to pay the guy who would have been the third-team All-Pro right tackle a year ago? Like, this is the lesson that Jerry Jones has refused to learn, that the Cincinnati Bengals have refused to learn. This is not the company you want to be keeping when it comes to signing your own guys.
Wow. Maybe I'm going to leave and get a major cheeseburger.
He's on fire. Yeah, I fully agree with you. And, you know.
You should do nationals.
Heard him when I got home from the bar last night. He was doing national stuff.
You were in bed by 9:30.
I was.
Oh, okay.
I was on at 9.
Oh, okay. Till?
Midnight.
Ooh. And now you're back here at it with us knuckleheads. I wish I had more to add to that.
He nailed it.
But again, I don't like. There's an old person saying, which I've now established that I am, after being told by one of the fest goers that I wouldn't know any of the bands.
She was right.
Looking to get some sort of a wristband for. If you're going to ask for a wristband, you got to be nicer to me, and we don't have them anyway. But it's called penny wise but pound foolish, and they can save these pennies. It's a British thing, pounds. But the reality is, it's going to cost you more in the end. And Gabe's exactly right. I mean, here's what bothers me about Zack Tom, and I know we had this conversation on Jen, Gabe, and Chewy as well. You know, in one way, you're all over Jair Alexander for not playing through the knee injury. Here's Zack Tom, who plays an entire season after tearing his pec in April. He never gets the strength back. He can't bench to rebuild the strength during the season. He has to play a different type of game. He, by his own admission, does not have his best season, even though Pro Football Focus had him with his highest grade. He finished with the third most votes at right tackle for All-Pro voting, and yet you don't take care of him now. You know, I had a conversation with Homer last week, too, about the Elton Jenkins situation. You don't have to win every negotiation. You know, you want to have the flexibility. I get it. They want to have the flexibility that if this doesn't go well, that they can part ways with him after the 2025 season. First of all, if he's on the roster on opening day, he's going to be guaranteed his base salary for this season. So you guarantee that amount. You guarantee a little bit of money from 2026. And if it doesn't work out and you decide that you want to go a different direction at center, fine. But instead of having him miss the entire offseason program, instead of having it hanging over your head, do the right thing by the guy and be done with it. You yourself, Goody, said that he would be an all-pro center. If you feel that strongly about him, put your money where your mouth is, and yet still you add a couple of dummy years to the contract. If you need to move on from him, you can. And those two things should be resolved. The Anthony Belton not being signed yet because only 4 second-round picks have signed because they all want guaranteed deals now.
Somebody got a guaranteed one, and now all of them want a guaranteed one.
Right, and I don't blame them for that. But that one's a little harder to avoid. The other two, to me, those are what we like to call unforced errors. They could be resolved.
And I would just say, because Ron Wolf had the theory of he wasn't really going to pay his offensive line because they didn't score touchdowns. He wanted to save his money for that. So I would say, okay, maybe he's doing that, except
he's not paying them either.
You went outside of the organization to pay somebody.
Right.
And so that's obviously not what they're doing either. So I don't know why you'd be willing to pay someone like Aaron Banks, but not being willing to pay. It's not like Zack Tom. If Zack Tom was closer to 30, going on to a third contract, I think I'd understand.
Like Elton Jenkins.
Yep, I'd understand a little bit more. But isn't it the dream to draft somebody as good as Zack Tom in the 4th round?
Sure is.
So you can eventually pay that person?
Bingo. So, to your point, you have 3 starters from last year entering contract years on this offensive line. Zack Tom, we do believe will be back, I would assume. We would all agree they will eventually extend him. This will not be his last season.
I don't know that.
I can't say that with all certainty.
Wow. So we've lost, because I feel like at least during last season we all operated like that was going to be a foregone conclusion, but they haven't locked him up
yet. There was a time before Romeo Doubs stayed home from work that week. The question was, who will they extend first, Romeo Doubs or Zack Tom? Now, I don't know if they extend either of them. I would certainly hope that we are just being alarmist and that Zack Tom, who I don't think should take the field for training camp without
Absolutely
a contract,
I agree with you.
Absolutely not.
will get taken care of. But, again, if they don't do that and they choose to play hardball, they're cutting off their nose, in my opinion, to spite their face. So he needs to get taken care of. The other part of it is, I would argue, look, use Jordan Morgan as your 6th man because your guys are not going to all stay healthy all season long. Have them train at both tackle and both guard spots and let Rasheed Walker start one more year because you don't want to pay him? Great. Let someone else pay him and take the compensatory draft pick you get for him signing big money.
So you vote this will be Rasheed Walker's last season in Green and Gold.
Yeah, and
Yes.
then
Gabe,
the other one obviously is Sean Ryan,
Yep.
who I think is also a better player than he probably gets credit for. And what I love about Sean Ryan, he's got a little bit of Scott Wells to him. They keep trying to give away his job, and he keeps winning it back anyway. Him and Rasheed Walker have both done that, and I have a lot of respect for guys who do that.
I tend to agree, but will they be Packers when we are talking
there
next year?
There will be one of the 3, I would think.
And I would think it's Zack Tom.
You would certainly think so.
It better be Zack
And
Tom.
hope.
It better be Zack Tom. But again, apparently he's in a competition for his job, according to the coaching staff. And
Right.
so,
That was one of the weirdest things I've had happen.
so based on
When we talked to Adam Stenovich during the offseason.
Who's the offensive coordinator,
and
of course.
and Luke Butkus, the offensive line coach, both doubled down on basically saying that Zack Tom is in a competition at right tackle. And I thought when Steno said it the first time, I thought he misspoke, but then he circled back and said it again, so he clearly didn't. And I don't know if that's a negotiating ploy or what that is, but if your best offensive lineman is having to compete for his job, I understand the NFL is a competitive business, but again, there's a line between you have to compete and you want to feel appreciated. And the idea that you should be getting an extension, and instead the coaching staff is talking about you as a guy who's competing to keep his starting job, that feels like a disconnect to me.
I'm not going to lie. If it is a negotiating play,
It's not a good one.
It's not a good one.
It's not a good one, but I'd kind of feel a little bit better because then maybe the coaching staff and some of those other silos are actually communicating.
Bravo.
Cooking up, this guy.
And that is a long edition of Mr. Relevant, a long edition of State of the Offense, but an awesome conversation, some really valuable stuff there from Wilde and Neitzel. Appreciate that conversation each and every year I have with them. Before we get out of here for the Wednesday edition, got to tell you about our friends at Door County Distillery. Locally produced, handcrafted, award-winning spirits made locally in beautiful Door County. Bourbon, my favorite, but they're whiskeys. They've got brandies, they've got rums, they've got gins, they've got vodkas. They're award-winning, they're local, they're affordable, they're the best. And they're available all over the state of Wisconsin, Madison, Milwaukee, Green Bay, wherever you're at. Door County Distillery has you covered for anything you got going on this summer, birthday parties, family reunions, tailgates, etc. They're affordable. They're delicious. It's going to be the hit of your party. Check out their website, DoorKountyDistillery.com. They've got a great search tool. Look for the product you want. Find the retailer nearest you. It's as simple as that. It's a little drop-down box. You want the bourbon? Click. Type in your zip code. The nearest location to you pops up. That's DoorKountyDistillery.com. We'll be back Friday. State of the defense. The defensive line, the linebackers, the defensive backs. Myself, Gabe Neitzel, Jason Wilde from State of the Packers 2025. That's coming your way Friday right here on Mr. Irrelevant.